Sometimes I think my dad visits me as a ghost. About 5 years ago, my dad passed away from cancer, and since then, my family has had very limited but weird experiences here and there. About a year after, I was a sophomore in college, and I had a friend over, and we were talking about movies and things we enjoyed. And my dorm that year, I had a wall full of posters of things that I loved. I had like a Legend of Zelda poster, an Ariana Grande poster, like I had at least 15. And one of the ones I had was of The Shining, which is arguably my favorite horror movie of all time. So I'm sitting on like our little couch talking to my friend, and I started talking about how the first time I watched The Shining was with my dad. For my dad, movies were a really, really important thing. Like he built a movie theater in my basement. Like we had a bunch of different posters on the wall. He had like action figures, and he was a nerd. But I was telling my friend about how I love The Shining because my dad made me watch it. And as I'm telling this story, the Shining poster on my wall just unsticks and then slowly curls and falls to the floor. Just like that in like 2 seconds. Mind you, they were all put up with the same tack. They were all put up on the exact same day. And I, after that, don't think I had any other instance of a poster falling down. Like the putty I got from Amazon worked pretty well, but it was just the Shining poster that fell off the wall. And after that, I was like, damn. I was like, hey, Dad, what's up? What's up? My friend was like, what the fuck? And then the most recent event that happened was on my sister's 26th birthday celebration. My mom and my sister were talking about my dad and like how like he should be here, but we all know that he's still like with us in spirit and he's still celebrating. And as they're saying that, the cap on like the margarita shaker that she was making drinks out of, that's incredibly hard to take off, that requires like grip strength, just popped off as they were like, he's still here, he's still with us. So we still think that he roams. I think he still roams to this day. And I'm not a very religious person, but I think I believe in like energy and spirits and things like that. And I think sometimes it's nice to step back from like the scary ghost stories and think like there are nice ghosts. And sometimes the ghosts can be the ones that you loved that have passed on. If you guys have any similar stories about loved ones that have passed who you think kind of like friendly haunt your space, please comment them or message me because they always make me feel happy. And I had to tell this story because the last story I told literally made me almost pee myself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little supplement story that I have. As always, send me things that you want me to read and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
This girl said that something gluttonous and not human followed her and her family home from a national park and was literally eating everything. And I mean everything. So Samantha said that her and her family went to this national park and that the minute they got there, they just felt like something was off about the place, and they had also found like evidence that there was cult activity there. For some reason, they decided to stay and camp for the entire week. So on the first night, they get in their tents, they get in their sleeping bags, they fall asleep, right? They wake up in the middle of the night to this slurping and crunching sound, like right outside of their tent. Something was literally chowing down on something outside of their tent. So her dad is like, what is that? And he gets up, he goes outside of the tent, and he sees something insane. He sees something super skinny with long hair and glowing white eyes just chowing down on elk. It then looks at her dad, lets out this screeching sound, and then just turns around and darts into the woods. And for the next week, they would wake up to these grotesque eating sounds. But that wasn't all they were hearing. Sometimes they would wake up to like this raspy, almost human voice saying, hungry, over and over again. At this point, she is like, I want to get the hell out of here. So they finally leave, and she is so happy to get back to her house. Unfortunately, that would not be the end of it. So they get back to their house, and oddly enough, their house is infested with rats, like filled to the brim. The problem is they would put out rat poison and the entire package would go missing, and the rats would not go away. So their backyard is massive. It's got like a little forest in it, and around that is like this massive forest. So she said that she would get a lot of moose in her yard, and the moose were pretty aggressive, so it was pretty dangerous to go back in that area of like where that was. So one day she goes to bed. She falls asleep. It's a normal night, and she wakes up in the middle of the night because she hears something. She looks over at the end of her bed, and standing at the end of her bed is this tall, skinny figure with white glowing eyes and long, scraggly hair, just staring at her with its mouth open with these massive dagger teeth. And she said that its mouth was unhinged to a point that was just unnatural. Like it was open so wide, and it had this snake-like slithering tongue, and it was just standing over her, staring at her, almost like observing her. She said at this point she was so scared that she could barely breathe because she's thinking this thing is going to do something to her, but it doesn't. It just vanishes. She's horrified at this point, but somehow she falls back asleep. Don't know how you people do it. So she wakes up the next morning. Her and her family go down to the kitchen, and there's just a massive amount of rat skulls just on the floor, piled on the floor. And all of their meat is out of their fridge. It's gone. All of it. She said that whatever this thing was hungry all the time, and that she suspected that if it didn't eat all the time, it was actually in pain. She said that this went on for years. Their meat would go missing, and the whole rat skulls thing. She said that if they didn't eat their meat within 2 to 3 days, the meat would be gone. She said that they would find 6 to 20 moose skulls in their yard, and that it would eat everything. Like, these skulls would just be cleaned out. Like, that's all that would be left. It wasn't a picky eater either. It would eat anything and leave it behind. She said that sometimes that they would wake up and they would hear that slurping and crunching sound outside, knowing that it was eating, and that other times they would see it staring at them in the corner of their rooms, just watching them. Sometimes they would wake up to it standing over their bed. Sometimes they would see it out the window, and it would always just be staring at them with those bright glowing eyes, that teeth, and that snake-like tongue. She said that it would eat multiple rats a night, and that it seemed to have a very healthy obsession for rats. And she also said that the family would constantly hear it mumble, "Hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry," over and over again. They would just hear this stuff in their house all the time. So much so that they actually got desensitized to this. She said that they eventually got used to just cleaning up all that stuff out of their backyard every single day, and that it ate all the rats, so that was good. But it would still stare at them from the corner of their room or by their bed. It just would never do anything. She said it actually seemed to be more curious of her and her family than anything else. She said its favorite food was probably moose. She said that she moved 7 years ago, but to this day, she still thinks about this entity and how hungry it was. And she said it's probably still out there, hungry, just eating everything. She said, in a way, she kind of misses it, but at the same time, it was horrifying looking. That is a wild story. And by the way, I said everything. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I am not going to do this anymore. Fine, screw with my views. I don't care. I have my people here that I know search for me and watch me, and that's all that matters to me. I can't keep doing this. I cannot keep saying special words I can't even say the dumbest words. It's so stupid. So this is probably going to get, but I don't care. So what do you guys think about this story?
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, you won't forget. Don't eat too much, cause you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, it's... yeah! Hey, bestie, I missed you. You wanna go get your snack, and your drink, and your rolling equipment? Okay. So for the sake of this story, let's call this guy James. James is one of those quiet male followers. Shout out to y'all. You know the guys love a good story time too. Y'all not slick. Anyway, James is Jamaican, so this happened back home in Jamaica. And this is a story that scarred him for the rest of his life. So back in Jamaica, it's basically like the same rules as other Caribbeans. Don't be outside at a certain time. Don't whistle. Y'all get it. So one afternoon, actually, he was playing with his friends. They were playing soccer. This was almost like a daily thing. After school, everybody does their homework. They do what they got to do. And then everybody meet outside and they play soccer till sundown. And it's time to go to bed. So that's what's happening. They're playing soccer. They're having fun. The sun is starting to go down. Some of the kids go inside for dinner. Some of the kids stay outside. James was one of those kids that like to stay outside. Listen, he loved playing soccer so much that he don't care if it's midnight outside. He'll be outside playing soccer. In his neighborhood, they had this one neighbor, and you only saw her during the day. As a child growing up in the village, you were warned by the adults about this lady. But lots of people believed that she was heavy on black magic. Never actually had physical proof, but it was just rumors going around. But it was true though. You only saw her during the day. Sometimes you see her sweeping the yard. Sometimes you see her feeding her animals. But you will never catch her outside when it's even slightly dark. The moment it starts getting dark, she goes inside and she does not come out all night. Anyway, James's yard was next to that neighbor's yard. And he's outside with his friends and they're playing soccer, and one of the friends kicks the ball accidentally into her yard. Now, the moment the friend did that, everybody automatically is like, well, time to go inside. Everybody know not to go in that lady's yard to get that ball. But the guy who kicked it, let's call him Jason. Jason is like, oh, I feel so bad because like I kicked it. Let me go get it. Everybody's like, no, like you know better. We all know better. So Jason is like, bro, she's not even gonna come out anyway. We also know that she never comes out at night. What are the chances of her coming out and doing something to us? The ball is literally right there. We're gonna go. We're gonna grab the ball and we're gonna leave out. We'll be fine. And then he says, James, you come with me. James is like, ooh. Before James even had a chance to say yes or no, Jason grabbed his hand and said, come on, the ball is right there. And so they start walking towards the yard. And James is a little scared. But Justin had a good point. She doesn't come out at night. Like, what's really gonna happen? And so James is like, bro, let's hurry up. At this point, my jaw is dark. Like, it's pitch black dark. This is in Jamaica. There's no, like, pole lights. It's dark. So they're looking at the ball, and they run towards the ball. But in order for them to get to the ball, they have to pass the house and pass a window. So they're trying to sneak under the window. If the lady's looking outside, the lady's not going to see them. So as James is, like, crouching under the window, and he's like, come on, Justin, hurry up. The ball is right there. He turned. Justin's gone. His heart dropped in his ass. So he turns around. He sees Justin. It's not like he just disappeared. He's gone. But he's only gone from next to him. When he looked back, he looked at Justin. Justin is standing in front of that lady's window, literally staring in major shock. He's seeing something he's never seen before. Remember they were trying to hide from the window? Jason is literally standing like that in front of the window. So James is like, yo, what are you doing? You okay? Jason started freaking out. I mean, not Jason, Justin. Justin started freaking out. He's like, Jason, Justin, James, I can't keep up. James and Jason. Okay. Justin tells Jason, yo, what are you doing? Jason, looking terrified, says, come look at this. In Justin's head, why do I keep saying Justin? And James's head, like, okay, he's talking to me, so he's okay. Let me see what he's talking about. So he goes over there and he looks at the window and he sees this lady butt ass naked, dancing around like she lost her damn mind. She's dancing like she does not have a piece of bone in her body. She's bending in ways that humans should not be bending, and especially not a lady her age. Not only that, she's doing the dancing and but she's also holding a bottle of hot sauce. Now, we've had stories about those kind of hot sauces before and where people be putting them. Now, in her case, she was spreading that thing all over her, in her eye, like just, ooh, that looked freaky. Y'all get it. She's like everywhere, and this lady is butt naked. He's only got a chance to look for like maybe 10 seconds before the dancing kind of like just suddenly stopped. She started to turn her body towards the window, and they both took it. They was out of there. Fuck the ball. As soon as they got far away enough, both of them just started crying because they're really young at the time. So could you imagine seeing something like that? At night, of course, neither one of them could go to sleep. But guess what? The next day, James wakes up to his mom coming up to him, telling him that his ball was just sitting in front of their door. So mom came to give it back to him, thinking that she left it outside. I mean, he left it outside or something. James instantly got scared, told his mom what happened, and his mom didn't even give him the ball anymore. His mom just took the ball and did whatever it is that she did with it. Yeah, that was just like the most traumatizing story that he ever experienced. And he wanted me to share it to y'all. Don't forget to let me know what you're eating in the comments, and don't forget to go and grab your ebook to protect yourself from things like this. Yeah, I love you, bestie. Bye.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. Girl enters bathroom 2 nights in a row, but the second night, something else walks out. I'm from Sweden, and this took place just a few nights ago. I've always believed in energies and spirits, but this was something completely different. My friend and I were staying at a camping ground with a theater group. We had cabins, and after performing each night, we'd stay up late walking around the area. It became routine. Roam the grounds, talk to anyone we ran into, just being open to people. Looking back, maybe we were a little too open. There's a public bathroom building near the camping area with a small playground beside it, including a seesaw. That spot became the center of everything that happened. It was our second night there. Around 11 p.m. That's when we first saw her. A girl, around 14 years old, in pajama pants and a black hoodie, walking towards the public bathrooms. We noticed her because we were out walking and, as usual, looking for someone to talk to. She went into the bathroom. We headed over to the playground nearby and sat on the seesaw. I glanced at the bathroom building. It has a frosted window in the door. Not clear, but you can still see shapes through it. I saw her silhouette standing completely still inside, just facing the mirror. At first, it was just odd. But the longer she stood there, unmoving, the stranger it felt. Minutes passed. She didn't shift, didn't fix her hair, nothing. Just stood there. We eventually moved the seesaw closer to the bathroom for a better view. Still, nothing. She did not move. Then we pushed the seesaw back into its place. And the moment we started swinging again, the door opened. She walked out, same hoodie on, and walked back the way she came. But we didn't see where she went. Later that night, we were hanging out at a big outdoor chessboard with two friends when we saw her again. Same outfit, walking the same path, but this time towards the forest. My friend called out to her, but she didn't even look at us, just continued walking towards the trees. The second night this happened, it was again around 11 p.m. We ended up back at the seesaw, and it was quiet. There was nobody else around. But we saw the same girl again. This time, she wasn't wearing the hood, and we saw her hair. Dark blonde, medium length, a bit curly. We said hi and offered her some candy. She gave us a weird smirk. Not unfriendly, but not normal. It was like she knew something we didn't. She said, "No thanks," in a voice that just felt off. She walked inside the bathroom again. She didn't come back out. Time passed, long enough to feel wrong and weird. We got up and walked around the building, but there was no sign of her. If she had exited, we would have seen her. We circled back to the front and checked the frosted window, and we both saw the same thing. Her hair. The medium length, slightly curly blonde hair. She was inside, just standing there though, again staring at the mirror. We moved the seesaw to the side so we could both see more clearly through the window. We sat, silent, watching. Then the door unlocked. She pulled the handle down, but when the door opened, it wasn't her. It was an old woman, short, hunched a bit, dark brown, short hair. She didn't even glance at us, just walked away. We were frozen. I mean, truly frozen. That moment didn't feel like shock. It felt like our brains couldn't compute what just happened. It was wrong. Deeply wrong. We ran into the bathroom, and it was empty. No other exit, no hiding places. just cold tiles and silence. We sat back on the seesaw, trying to make sense of it, but something felt heavier now. The air felt thicker, like something was watching us. Of course, it could have been a coincidence, but it felt like everything was timed, like someone or something was watching and reacting. We decided we would go and tell my friend's mom about it, who had had some paranormal experiences herself. But when we reached the cabins, there was a big fight with some people in our group outside. There was people crying, people yelling, people screaming at each other. We tried approaching, but it felt impossible. Like something didn't want us to talk about it. Like we weren't supposed to get to her. We walked away, waited, and then came back again. But it was still chaos. It felt surreal, like we were stuck in someone else's story. Eventually, later, things calmed down, and we found her alone inside the cabin. We told her everything. She didn't laugh, she didn't doubt us, she listened. She believed us. She said that we had made ourselves open by wandering and seeking contact, that maybe something had noticed. Maybe it wanted to talk, or maybe it wanted us to see it.
Why did Anne Frank go into hiding, you guys? Why did Anne Frank go into hiding? What was the reason she went into hiding? Was it because A, she was a horrible monster tainting the streets? Or was it B, because the Gestapo started going door to door and ripping people from their homes? History is literally repeating itself right before our eyes, and we're all just do. Worse is that some of you, most of you, are still bowing down to this regime. People like to say a lot that this cannot be compared to the Holocaust. No, I know nothing can be compared to the Holocaust. However, how did the Holocaust begin? If you actually retained any information from school, you would know that it started with mass deportations, like dehumanizing language, stripping all of their legal protections, and empowering the police to be able to decide who belongs, Which... Have you been paying attention to anything that's going on? The fact that more people aren't connecting these dots on their own is quite concerning. DT didn't start this trend, okay? He's just normalizing it again. We're in a dictatorship. Like, this is we are full on in a dictatorship. I'm not gonna keep rambling to you guys because I know your attention spans are very short, but I'm just saying that the connection is there, and I hope that you guys can open your eyes and see it too, because we are in a world of trouble. And yes, even the people who live in the furthest corners of the United States, such as myself, yes, we are in deep shit too.
Never accept food from certain people, and I'm gonna read you some stories as to why. This lady says that she was 8 months pregnant at the time, and her mother-in-law invited her over for dinner. She noticed that the moment she told her mother-in-law that she was pregnant, her mother-in-law started acting really weird towards her. So she ends up having this dinner with her mother-in-law and her husband, and they go back home, and when she does, she started to feel really sick all night. The following morning, she still felt very horrible, so they ended up taking her to the hospital, and she ends up having her baby due to this emergency. From that day forward, she did not eat anything from her husband's side of the family. She firmly believes that her mother-in-law was doing brujeria to basically kill her baby. This lady says that she had a patient who accepted food from his ex-girlfriend and ended up really bad in the hospital. Apparently, this guy could not stop vomiting. All of the tests that they did on this guy would come out normal, like if nothing was wrong with him. So this lady says that because there was nothing physically wrong with him, he ended up going to this shaman. This shaman ended up digging through his belly button and takes out snake skin from it. The nurse is like, please do not accept food from anybody because what the fuck? This next one, what the fuck? This girl says, in the same way that you shouldn't accept food from people in real life, you should not accept it in your dreams either. It goes beyond that. She says that if you're dreaming and you're about to have a sexual encounter with somebody, try to wake up. Do not go along with it. She says that that is also a way that people do brujeria, witchcraft on you. And if you end up having that sexual encounter, they control you. So the next story is from a daughter, and she says that her mom always told her that when she was pregnant with her, she always always had problems with her mother-in-law. The trend is mother-in-laws. Some of you mother-in-laws need to chill the fuck out. So there was one day where she was at her mother-in-law's house and she offered her a tea. And she asked her, well, what kind of tea is it? And the mother-in-law says, oh, it's just some herbs. The mom says yes, but she didn't end up drinking the tea. She just left it on the table. When her husband gets there, which is the girl's dad, the mom ends up telling her husband, hey, your mom offered me some tea, but she didn't tell me what it was. She does tell him that she didn't drink it though. But the moment that she tells her about this weird encounter, she says that her husband stays very quiet, almost like in shock. He ends up telling her that this has already happened before in the past. Apparently, her dad had an ex-wife who had passed away, and that he remembers when this lady, his ex-wife, had told him that the mom offered her some weird tea and she actually drank it. This next story is again of a mother-in-law. What is going on? I think it's just like Mexican moms and their sons. That shit is weird. That shit is weird. These are all in Spanish, by the way, by a Mexican person. I'll leave their name in the caption. If you want to read more, he does a lot of these stories, but again, it's in Spanish. So this lady says that her mother-in-law shows up to her house with a bowl of pozole that she had saved for her. She ends up leaving. She doesn't stay. She just dropped up the pozole, and when her grandmother overhears her saying, oh, she just came to drop off pozole, she immediately screams at her, do not eat that pozole from the living room. Now, by this point, she had accidentally eaten a spoonful of pozole and basically threw away the rest. Within 5 minutes of her eating that just spoonful of pozole, she started to feel very sick. She ends up passing out. The last thing she remembers was a friend that had stopped by who was calling the ambulance for her, and she just blacked out after that. She ended up staying in the hospital for a couple of days because she almost lost her baby. If I ever have kids, I promise I will never be a mother-in-law like that, because what the fuck? Why are you so obsessed with your sons? What is going on? Anyway, what do you guys think?
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of this man who used to beat his wife and eventually hospitalized her. Then he lied about how she got into the hospital, and the grandmother dealt with him traditionally. This man would get frustrated by outside things, come back and take it out on his wife, basically beating her. He would also cheat on his wife, and then when his wife found out, he would beat her ass for finding out, like, why are you going through my phone? That means you don't trust me. I don't know, maybe you could have planted that. And yeah, this was the type of guy that would always find a reason to beat his wife. She would bath to look good, and he would beat her because she bathed. Like, why are you bathing? Who are you trying to look good for? She would leave the house and go to the shop, and then she'd find maybe one of her friends. She would take time, she would come back, and he would beat her. So, and then this lady eventually got fed up with what this guy was doing, and she left. When she left, guy went to the girl's home, to the wife's home, and was like, listen, oh, baby girl has left me, and she left me to go be with another man. And he went there and just lied and said that she had been cheating on him, blah, blah, blah. Problem is, this wife was not telling her family members what was going on in her home. So she would get beat up and she would keep quiet, which was a bad move, because now this man is just going home and lying on your name. And then, obviously the family members, the grandmother would call the wife and be like, why are you doing that? Why are you embarrassing us? The parents would call, the uncles, the aunt, and they would call a family meeting, and they would tell the wife to apologize, the husband to apologize, because if they have issues, they need to fix it together, not the other one going to find another one, blah, 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 and they fix their issues. And then their marriage continued again. This guy continued to beat her up. And then girl again got fed up and she moved on with another guy. Right? Again, the guy went to the wife's family home, lied, and they fixed things and they got back together. This time when they fixed things, it was different. When she got back to the house, this guy beat her up because the guy was like, you are embarrassing me. Why would you go and date somebody else? Whereas this guy stayed in the streets, and if he treats you well, just because he stays in the street doesn't mean you shouldn't find your soulmate. She went for a guy that stayed in the streets, and he got mad and he beat her up to the point that he hospitalized her. And then
he experienced death and then woke up 20 minutes later. You might have heard this one before. It's one of my favorite Glitch in the Matrix stories. So this guy gets a phone call from his neighbor late in the evening asking if he can help him move a mattress to his upstairs. I guess this neighbor's mother was ill and she needed one of those really big sleep number beds. So when he asked, Of course, he was right over to help because he said that they were really great neighbors. So when he arrives, he sees that the neighbor's friend is there also to help, and he just so happened to be a priest. So they get to work. He said that he helped figure out how to remove the mattress from the frame in order to get it up the stairs, and they did that, and everything was all in place. And then his neighbor asked, could you help me also move an armoire? And of course, he thinks nothing of it. Of course, he'll help. So he starts to bring this thing with assistance out of the trailer. They start moving it up the stairs. And then he goes, this is when I died. He said that the neighbor and his friend were going backwards up the stairs, pulling this thing up while he was on the bottom, halfway up the flight of stairs. He said there were about 11 stairs. He said just then they lose grip and this thing comes crashing down on him and he starts falling backwards towards the pavement. And then just like that, he's now waking up in his dining room to the sound of his phone ringing. And his wife's like, are you going to answer that? And sure enough, it's his neighbor asking if he can come over and help them move the mattress up the stairs. And right here, if this were me, I would just make something up and be like, I'm sorry, I can't come over. But he still agrees to go. So he gets there, he sees the priest friend, and they're introduced because technically this is the first time that they're meeting each other. And then he goes, I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. And they were like, how did you know about the armoire? And then he proceeds to tell him that he's pretty sure he just died. So he said he spent the next hour talking with the priest because he had so many questions, as one does. So he says that the neighbor didn't believe him, but he did go ahead and describe in great detail a lot about the bedroom that's upstairs, that at this point, this guy was not supposed to have ever been up there yet. And then the priest asked him, what did you see after you died? And he goes, I mean, I never really did die. I just woke up in my dining room. How awesome is that one? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time.
Let's read another Reddit story. This one isn't really scary, but it is one of the stories that's going to be on my podcast episode that comes out on Sunday. So make sure you're following me on Spotify or YouTube or both, so you can hear the full episode, because I think y'all are really gonna like this one. My sister was shot while she was walking her dogs in our small town in Alaska. The bullet ricocheted, piercing her bowel in 9 places. Even though we had one of the best doctors in the north at our ER, and the only flight out of town was miraculously minutes away from takeoff and held up to fly her to Anchorage, she bled out and died on the operating room table. She knows because she vividly remembers everything the surgeon said as she laid dead on the table. What she told me later is remarkable. She recalls drifting up and into a very bright light. She was no longer in pain and felt compelled to travel into the brilliance. It led to an amazing river. Seriously, the look on her face when she describes this place helps me realize that radiant, endless joy is not just a possibility, but an eventuality. She describes playing in a river that consisted of pure knowledge. Anything she ever wanted to know was at her fingertips. As she played in this amazing river, she could sense figures on the distant shore. They were our people, she explained, our family, our animals, all patiently waiting for her to finish playing in the river and wade towards them on the shore. Though she was not ready to leave the marvelous river, she knew without being told that they would wait patiently and joyfully. But she never made it to the shore. As she was playing, an amazing thing happened. Seriously, people, if you could see the look on her face when she describes this next part, you would laugh with pure joy. A being approached her. She did not know what it was, except to describe it as pure, unconditional love. It radiated love. It pulsed love. And all things diminished before the radiance of that love. The next part makes me chuckle a bit, even though that seems out of place. She said it spoke to her and said that she had to go back, that it wasn't her time. She said, like a little kid, but I don't want to. When she recounts this experience, she emphasizes that to be in proximity of that being is all there is. She describes it as a completion, a peace, a welcoming. To leave was incomprehensible, but to decline was also incomprehensible. She felt infused with a purpose. Very, very, very reluctantly, she returned to life. She is amazing. Life is what we are here to do, she explains. But after, sweet, benevolent, all-encompassing love. Y'all better follow me! on Spotify and listen to my podcast on Sunday is all I'm gonna say. It is creepy, but we do have like nicer, happier stories like this. But yeah, that gives me hope. As someone who is really afraid of what happens after this story makes me happy. Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. I grew up always being able to visit my grandparents. We live in the same city, and I'd see them almost every other week. They've had the same house for years. The house was built in 1995, and I've never felt uncomfortable until my parents and I moved in with them for a few months. I was 11 at the time. The first week we moved in is when I saw it for the first time. I was in the kitchen, standing right outside of their pantry. I turned my head and saw a black short figure walk across my grandparents' room. My family was in the living room. I was curious, so I walked to their room, and it was pitch black. I remember it being light, so I really can't think of how it got so dark in their room. A few months later, on a Friday, I remember it was Friday because that's when I'd clean out my backpack. I was staying at my grandparents'. My mom and I had finally moved out, but my dad stayed for a while. It was around 11 p.m. and the house was pitch black. I was sitting on the staircase, iPad in hand, and my backpack right next to me. And in the darkness, I could hear the heavy footsteps. I looked up and I saw a dark figure walking past the stairs and into my grandparents' room. That's kind of when I knew it was time for bed. I didn't see it as often after that, only once, when I saw it peeking over the second floor railing, but that's it. Until last week and today. My dad moved to another town, but when he came to visit, we stayed at my grandparents' house. My dad always begged me to sleep in the middle bedroom, the creepiest one. Twin beds, a crib with creepy old stuffed animals in it, and has always given me a really bad vibe. Of course, I said no. So in the morning, I woke up. My dad and my grandma went downstairs at the same time. I saw them. About 30 minutes later, I was just lying in bed, not ready to get up, when I saw my grandma walk past my room. She was downstairs. She never goes upstairs unless it's time to go to bed, so there was no reason for her to come back up. I freaked out and ran downstairs. I've always felt nervous leaving the room I'd sleep in at their house. I always felt like there was someone right behind me. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I will always believe there is something in that house. I'm not frightened by it, but today I saw it at my mom's house. I knew it was the same figure, and I think it followed me. I was in the kitchen today, and in my pantry it was standing there. I only saw it for a split second, but I knew what it was. And my cats had been acting weird before that, staring at my mom's door frame way too often. The more I think about it, the more freaked out I get. That story was sent by Poppy. That is such a cute name. But that is really scary. And the fact that they are seeing it in their mom's house now. But I will say, it hasn't done anything bad, so hopefully it stays that way. Maybe it's a nice spirit just looking after Poppy. What do you think?
There's a national park in Kentucky. Looks like any other spot for a family weekend. But just past the tree line, there is a hole in the ground. The entrance to Mammoth Cave. Mammoth Cave is over 420 miles of mapped passages. And the 420 miles is just what's been discovered. Researchers estimate there could be another 600 miles waiting to be found. Nobody knows how far it actually goes. It's 3 times longer than the second longest cave in the world. It's not even close. Archaeologists have found fragments of those torches, still sitting where they fell, marking where those people walked, or maybe where they stopped walking. They've also found tools, scraps of food, and bodies. Some of them were burials, carefully and intentionally placed in that spot, like the cave was sacred to them, a final resting place. The cave kept them, and the cave keeps its secrets. So let me tell you a story about someone who felt or saw something really strange in this cave. This story was actually sent to me by one of you. He told me about an elderly man he knows, someone who's been exploring caves his whole life when he was young. And what he experienced down there, he says, he never forgot. He'd been to Mammoth Cave more times than he could count, but Crystal Cave always pulled him back. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the gypsum crystals caught the light and glittered like stars buried in rock. Or maybe it was something else. Yeah, so there's Homer walking through Crystal Cave like it's a Sunday stroll. Headlamp on, boots crunching on gravel, the air cool and dry. And then, halfway through one of the passages, he hears something. Tap. And there was a pause. Tap, tap. He stops. It sounds like someone chipping at rock. Homer is standing in that darkness. And that's when something touches his shoulder. Not a brush, not a graze, a hand. Fingers pressing firmly into his shoulder like someone is standing right behind him. He stumbles backward and his boots hit something solid. Wood. He drops to his knees, hands shaking, feeling the shape of it. It's long, smooth metal latches on the side. Now his headlamp flickers, it sputters, comes back on just enough to see. It's a coffin, and carved into the lid is a name, Floyd Collins. Now, if you're not from Kentucky, that name might not mean anything to you. But if you are, you know exactly who Floyd Collins is.
A lot of creepy stuff happens between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. What is it about this time of night that so many strange things occur? Now, there was this man named Lou. Lou grew up on the reservation in New Mexico, and he loved to walk at night. Now, his grandfather had always warned him, be careful going out after midnight, because this is when dark stuff comes out and hides in the shadows. He just took it as sort of superstition. Well, one night he happened to be walking home from a friend's house. It was about 20 minutes after midnight, and he said it was a perfectly still, calm night. And he didn't hear any sounds, there was no wind, and the stars and the moon, everything was out. It was just a beautiful night. Well, he starts walking in this little downtown area, and he said there was a few stores and a couple alleys. And as he turned the corner onto this one street, he notices this dog coming out of one of the alleyways. The dog kind of stops across the street, it turns, and it looks at him. Now, he mistakenly whistles at this dog, trying to call it over. He said this dog didn't move. It just stayed there and continued to stare at him. As he got a better look at this thing, it started to look not like a dog. He said something was off about it. The way that it moved, its mannerisms, he just got a bad feeling about this thing. Well, the dog just turned, and it kept on walking down the street. He continued on in the opposite direction. But then all of a sudden, he hears a whistle back. He turns around, there's no one there. The dog is gone. This freaks him out. He takes off running back to his house. He goes inside, and he goes into his bedroom, and he closes the door. Well, he couldn't sleep. He was really nervous about that encounter. So he puts on the TV and he lays in his bed. Well, he had his window slightly open, and there was a nice little breeze of wind coming in. He said that's when it got very, very quiet and very still. And he started to hear this dog barking. And he thought, maybe it's just one of the res dogs. It's nothing. But then it got louder, and it seemed like this dog was bothered by something. So he walks over to the window, and when he looks out, he doesn't see a dog. He sees a man on all fours. And this man is making the same kind of mannerisms as a dog, and it is barking like it is a dog, but it's a full-bodied man. So he falls backwards after seeing this thing because he was so shaken up by it. This thing charges at him and tries to get into the window, and it is trying to claw its way in. It is coming through this little crevice in the cracked open window, and he moves up against the...
It's so funny because it doesn't matter how many times I come across a story like this, I'm always baffled. So listen to this glitch in the Matrix story. So about 10 months ago, a woman named Tina was driving home with her family. She said they were about 10 minutes from home, and they approached an intersection where they had a red light. So while they're sitting there just waiting for the light to change, she's looking around and noticing which intersection she's at. She's obviously familiar with it since it's not far from home. And then the daughter, from sitting in the back, asks her mom, could she check her email because I guess they're expecting one from her teacher. So Tina checks her email and there is no message. And she said it was probably no more than like a minute or two that she was looking down at her phone while they're waiting for the light to change when she looks up. And she's super confused because, guys, she said she does not recognize where she's at. Remember, she was just looking around at the intersection, knew that they were very close to home. But now she's like, what in the heck? So she looks over and asks her husband, where are we? And then she's like, did we make a wrong turn? And now he's looking around and he is equally confused. He has no idea where they are. So she pulls out her GPS and she plugs in her home address. And guys, they are over an hour away from home. So they are all confused. Nobody has any idea what the heck happened because they all know they were very seemingly close to home. Freaking crazy that something like that can happen. It's nice that there were multiple people in the car too, because I know that when one person claims something like that, it's hard to believe them, but explain away everybody experiencing the same thing. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
Let's read some more of your stories. We're going to read a bunch of little short stories that everyone has sent in, so please bear with me while we switch topics really quickly. This first story comes from Macy. I have a story. So believe it or not, I live in Oregon. Nobody usually knows where Oregon is until I bring up the fact that the popular show Gravity Falls is placed here. But I can confirm that weird shit does happen here. There's no mystery shack, I think, or anything along those lines, but there is weird experiences I myself have experienced. I was once in the woods at night like an idiot, and I heard loud screaming coming from behind me. I was obviously freaked the fuck out and tried to get the hell out of the woods just to hear the same screaming coming from the opposite direction. And I know what a cougar call sounds like, and this was definitely human. I had a flashlight, thankfully, because I knew it was going to get dark out. So I made my way back to a gas station where my mom's car was, just to realize it wasn't there and the gas station was locked. It was scary as hell, and I could still hear the screaming in the distance. Hours later, I got woken up by my mom in the woods still. She asked me why I wasn't responding to her. The thing is, it felt too real, and I still had a cut from when I was running out of the woods, so I don't fully understand what happened. I hope you like my story. This is 100% real, and I do still live in Oregon. Love your content, and I've been following since 400 followers. Thank you. So you were asleep. You ended up being asleep this entire time, but you still have evidence that, like, this happened to you. So, like, your mom's car was actually at the gas station. That's so weird. That is very Gravity Falls. Like, that's very, like... I kid you not. I just heard my fucking door swing wide open and shut. You guys are probably not going to be able to even hear that because I have a microphone, but holy crap. Anyways, as I was saying, that is so interesting. I wonder if, like, it's similar to something that's like a glitch in the Matrix almost, but you're hopping into another version of our dimension, if that makes sense. But I read a story similar to, like, a glitch in the Matrix where, like, something happened to someone that they remembered, or it was in a dream, but they had evidence that it actually happened, even though it happened in a dream. Thank you for sending that in. If you have any more stories about living in Oregon, please send them my way. I have always wanted to go there because I love Gravity Falls. This one comes from Paige. Hi, this is kind of an old ghost story I have, and honestly, no one really believes me about it. Ever since I was really young, I've always believed in the paranormal. Often I would feel like I wasn't always quite alone. When I was around 7 years old, my mom gave me these really old baby dolls she had from her mom. They were all porcelain and honestly really creepy, but little me was obsessed with one. I specifically remember this one time where I was just laying in bed and I honest to God watched it turn its head towards me. I have never screamed so loud in my life. I proceeded to lock it in a cabinet I had for years. One thing I distinctly remember for months at night is hearing scratching and a little hum. Absolutely not. That thing would be on fire. I'm sorry. That thing would be on fire, thrown out of my window to the next county. What did you do with it? Did you like end up getting rid of it, or is it just in a cabinet still locked in there? I would be curious to know. Thank you, Paige, for sending this one in. This one also comes from a user named Emma. Hi, I have a story from back in like 2019, 2018 when I lived in California. I was hanging out with a friend when it was time to bring her back to her house. We didn't live too far, so we would usually just walk. The area between our houses was very dark, besides house lights and a couple of street lights. I also lived by the desert. Once I dropped her off, I felt the energy switch. When I was walking back, I felt eyes on me. I turned around and I locked eyes with something. It was tall, hunched over. Once we locked eyes, I started running. It chased me and it felt faster than anyone I've seen ever. Luckily, I was close enough to my house. It was definitely not human and it still haunts me to this day. The picture in my mind of just turning around and seeing something only reflected by like streetlights running after you is so terrifying, and I'm glad you're okay. That's fucking terrifying. That's so scary. Thank you, Emma, for sending this in. I'm glad you're okay. I'd be curious to know if you had any more instances with this running creature. As always, if you guys have your own personal stories, please send them my way and I will get to them if I can. Apologies if I don't respond to your message. Just know that I do see them all. It just takes a lot of time for me to like accept and respond to them all, but I do always appreciate every message that you guys send me. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Let's read another true and scary story. Real experiences I've had while working as a nurse. In my mid-20s, I worked at a subacute rehab facility. Generally, these places exist to help those who are struggling after an accident, surgery, etc. regain their mobility and quality of life with the help of physical therapy and around-the-clock nursing care. I worked in the dementia unit. These patients were long-term and most ended up living out the rest of their days there. Although it was called the dementia unit, our patients were comprised of those suffering from permanent or long-term brain-related conditions. These included dementia, Alzheimer's, comas, strokes, traumatic brain injuries, and brain tumors. These are the experiences I had while working there. Number 1, disembodied hand. I had just clocked in for the evening and received report from the day shift nurse. I was standing at the end of the hallway with my back against the wall, reviewing the notes I had taken from the previous nurse. While reading over my slip of paper, I felt what could only be described as a hand dragging its fingers horizontally across my abdomen. I jerked back and looked around, but I was completely alone. 2, the call light symphony. Although I do not have a particular story about call lights, it was a normal occurrence to have call lights in empty rooms triggered, even in rooms where the wires that were attached to call buttons were unplugged from the wall. Some nights, the nurses would be forced to respond to several phantom calls from empty rooms. Number 3, the empty room ghost. At the very end of one of our halls contained a habitually empty room. The heat air conditioning unit was broken, so patients were never placed there. The nurses and aides would use that room for privacy during personal phone calls, to poop in peace, or do whatever else required some seclusion. One evening, I headed into that room's bathroom to touch up my makeup and fix my hair. I left the bathroom door slightly ajar while going about my business. I was putting my hair up in a bun when the bathroom door slammed shut behind me. Mid-heart attack, I spun around and jerked the door back open. The room was empty. The time it would have taken a human to exit the room would have been longer than what it took me to open the bathroom door. I'd also like to note that there was no furniture in the room, nothing a human could have hid behind. I'm convinced it wasn't a living person who slammed that door. Number 4, the last farewell. One patient we had residing in the long-term unit was a middle-aged woman with severe Down syndrome. She was mostly nonverbal, save for a few words she would utter randomly. She was very sweet and always had a smile on her face. It was my turn to help her eat dinner the night this story takes place. She didn't have the motor skills to eat properly, so I spoon-fed her while we caught up on cartoons on her TV set. But this particular night, she acted completely out of character. I didn't notice at first because I was engrossed in the show we were watching. I failed to notice her attempts to get my attention. She finally resorted to using grunts to call me away from the TV screen. When I finally noticed, she seemed overjoyed with something. Her mouth was stretched into a wide grin and she was pointing at an empty corner in the back of her room. I could clearly see the corner, but nothing else. I looked back and forth between her and the corner, but I couldn't understand what she was trying to communicate. She was pointing, giggling, and waving at apparently nothing in the corner. I tried asking her what she was trying to show me. Simple yes and no questions she could nod or shake her head to. I became uneasy with her actions because I knew she was seeing something that I could not. After I finished up feeding her, I walked back out to the hallway and was immediately approached by a fellow nurse. My stomach sank and I felt queasy when she told me the next door neighbor of the woman I was just feeding had passed away during dinner time. Number 5, the window watcher. Not my story, but was told to me by a fellow nurse. My friend, let's call her Mary, worked the night shift at the same rehab as I, but this story takes place years before I was hired there. Mary was close to one of her patients, and she went out of her way to make her feel special. The patient was an elderly woman with no living family and was chronically lonely. Let's call the patient Emily. When Mary bonded with Emily, it became a habit of Emily's to wait by her room's window, which faced the employee parking lot, so when she saw Mary walking up to the building, she could wave. This became a special occasion for Emily, and the two would wave to one another before and after Mary's shift while she traveled to and from the employee parking lot. And then Emily fell ill and was unable to get out of bed for a while. Every time Mary pulled up for work, she would check to see if Emily was waiting by the window. When she didn't see her, she would know walking in that Emily was still sick. This went on for a few weeks. Mary would pull into the parking lot, hoping to see her sweet patient up and out of bed and waiting patiently to wave to her. But then one day, Mary showed up at work and saw Emily standing at her window, peering out over the employee parking lot. Mary was thrilled and hopped out of her car and gave Emily a gleeful wave. But Emily stood motionless and did not react to Mary's exuberant greeting. Puzzled, Mary headed into the building only to quickly find out that Emily passed away earlier that day. Oh my gosh. Nurse stories are always super interesting to me because I feel like they are so surrounded by death all the time that since they come in contact with it so much, they experience more. And I'm glad to see that people on Reddit are posting their own stories about experiencing some paranormal activity. As always, if you guys have stories you'd like to send my way, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains and I lived in a haunted house. I also dated a girl who could see dead people. I moved in with my grandmother to take care of her. She wasn't doing well. She was bedridden. She had to stay in a hospital bed at all times. For a long time, I did not believe my girlfriend that she could see dead people or spirits, cryptids, whatever you want to call it. I didn't think she could see them. I thought she was lying through her teeth. This one night, she was at my grandmother's house with me. I call her my Nana. I was in Nana's room talking to her, and she's looking past me in the corner, kind of down in the corner. And she suffered from sundowners. After the sun would go down, she would start to lose her mind a little bit. I took it as a grain of salt because a lot of crazy things happened in this house. I was like, it's the sundowners, whatever. Well, this night, because my girlfriend was there at the same time while this conversation was happening, she would not come in the room. I thought that was weird. So after I left the room, I said, why would you not come in the room? She said there was a little girl in the corner. Excuse me? I didn't see no little girl in the corner. My grandmother saw the little girl in the corner because she was looking, she was smiling, kind of grinning a little bit. And my girlfriend saw the little girl in the corner. I don't know that she noticed my grandmother's face doing these expressions, but she saw the little girl in the corner. And my grandmother's sister had a young daughter pass away years ago. I don't know that I would believe that it was an innocent spirit that was still there. I don't know if things that are not, how do I put this, not looking for anything good from you would present themselves as something innocent to get what they need. That night in particular made me start believing that she could see things. She would not go around certain areas where there were old graveyards. There was a tree on her property she would not go near, and she hated the basement in my grandmother's house. So what do you think? Can people actually see these things?
My name is Vanessa, and recently my grandma moved back to Mexico. My uncle and his wife went with her so she wouldn't be alone during the first few days. The house she's staying in has always been considered haunted. My uncle actually passed away in that house. I remember the very first time I stepped inside. It immediately gave a strange, uneasy feeling. Some of my aunts live near my grandma's house in Mexico, and recently they've been telling her that they have seen a woman who looks like a nurse going into her house. My grandma brushed it off, saying she isn't afraid of things like that. Just the other night, it was late, and my grandma was getting ready for bed when she suddenly heard someone loudly say, "Mago," her nickname. She thought it might have been my uncle or his wife who was staying with her, but they weren't home yet. She looked around to see where the voice came from, but she didn't see anyone. The next day, my uncle and his wife told my grandma that around the same time she heard her name, they were sitting on the couch when they suddenly felt as if someone had sat down next to them. But when they looked, no one was there. I honestly don't know how my grandma handles things like this, or how she isn't scared at all. I have more stories, but this one is already long enough.
Do spirits sometimes give us warnings? Now, there's a story out of Odessa, Texas. There's this man named Greg. Greg and his family moved into this small family home in Odessa, Texas. And they'd lived there about 2 years. And he said this one night when him and his family were all asleep, the phone started to ring. So he picked up the phone, and it was his neighbor. And his neighbor said, "Hurry, get out of your house right now, like it's on fire. There's flames outside coming out of the roof." So he runs, he grabs his wife, he grabs his kids, and he gets outside. But when they get outside the home, they look at the house. They can't see any signs of a fire. There's no smoke, there's no flames. So he's confused. He walks over to the neighbor's house and he knocks on his door. The neighbor comes to the door and he looks like he's just woken up. And he's like, "Hey man, why did you call me and tell me there's a fire? Like there's no fire at the house." And the neighbor's like, "What are you talking about? Like I've been asleep. I did not call you." And he was adamant that he never called him and told him his house was on fire. So Greg goes back home and he thinks, maybe it's just a prank call. But then this happened like 2 or 3 more times. Then one night they were all asleep. And
I just watched a video of this lady who was recording while experiencing a mimic outside of her house. Oh my god. So the video starts out with her son crying because he heard, I guess his sister, somebody he's related to, outside of the house yelling help. And then he also heard his dad saying hey from the front of the house. And I want to say that the sister's voice was coming from outside of his window yelling help, and then he heard his dad's voice in the front of the house yelling help. But the thing is, neither of them were home, just him and his mom. So she starts recording. I guess this is something that has happened regularly. She does mention that when the activity in the house gets really bad, it's really bad. As she's like walking down the stairs, you can hear somebody yelling help outside. And she knows not to go out. She's not even trying to open the doors, but she looked outside and there was nobody out there, like through her window. And she was on the phone with her husband, who her son had said he heard outside, but he was on the drive home. She's like recording the dogs and they're all freaking out. They're all like pointing in one direction of the house, or they'll point in another direction. All of them, like collectively, point in one or another direction and like freeze, like do not move. It is the strangest thing. She goes on to mention that they have security cameras that are, I guess, out on the property, but that every time something like this happens, they are never able to pull the footage. It always says that there's no footage available or something happens. And she says that she's even contacted the security people, whoever they have their cameras set up with, to try and pull the footage on their end, and they tell her the same thing. It's unavailable. They can't pull it. Something's going on. So that is just, oh my god. Mimics genuinely scare me so bad. Mostly because just the manipulation that they're trying to pull. Okay, they observe, they know what's the one thing, or who's the one person or several people who they know that they can use their voice, mimic their voice, to try and get you to let them in, to try and get you to do what they want you to do, which is most of the time invite them into your home. Oh my god, I hated watching that. It's so strange. It's so strange.
I just got off the phone with my mom and we talked about these beings. Reason why is because our dear neighbor that we used to live, close by, and when we were in Haiti, passed away. And then that story came up. And then we talked about these beings for at least like an hour. And I told her, kind of like remind each other exactly my experience. And then, stuff that happens around that house with these beings. Let's get to it. So, I live very close to a neighbor, that kind of like became family pretty much, right? They had many kids, and one of them was actually very close to my age around that time. So like we became best friends. We were always playing basketball together, playing video games together. Like we did everything together. Like I'm talking about from the time that we wake up, from the time that we go to sleep. And then one time that I'm playing basketball with him, and I noticed that he had a massive wound, like near like his thigh area, and then it looks like a knife punch or something that actually went into his, literally went right in and right out. And I kept asking him what happened, like what happened that caused this, and then he didn't want to tell me nothing. And but his mom actually told my mom exactly what happened that caused this. Apparently he went over like the roof of his house, and he's trying to jump like onto the roof of my house, which is like 200 feet away. Like it's not humanly possible unless you like, I don't know, you like Wemby or LeBron James or Michael Jordan or something. You can leap over that house, like that, especially as a child. He didn't make it. And the two houses were actually separated by a gate. The gate had like spiked, on the top to keep people away. So he fell onto the gate, and then lucky for him, it was just his leg, one leg, that got hung on the gate, and then he was there for like hours, and until like one person actually found him, and then like he, thank God he made it. And I kept asking him, he didn't want to tell me, but like my mom told me, obviously. So the stupid kid that I was, I'm like, you know what? I can make that jump. I'm gonna go up on my roof and I'm gonna jump like, over his house. And I'm gonna tell him, hey, listen, I made that jump. You didn't. So when I got up there, right? This is where it really got really supernatural, guys. As soon as I got up there, like we surrounded by trees, and these beings, they love being around trees. Okay. As soon as I got up there, I heard voices telling me to jump. Jump, you can make it. Jump, 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 jump. I'm like, who's talking? So as soon as I turn around, I can see these little things, a bunch of them. I'm not talking about like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. I'm talking about a bunch of them hanging from branches, like, like hanging like from the tree, like making themselves, like look like they friendly. They telling me to jump. You can make it. We'll give you $1. They're showing me gold. I will give you this. They're showing me like watches and chain. Like, you can make this. And I swear to you guys, I was so compelled to jump and make that leap. I was ready. I'm literally backing up, right? So I can actually run, give myself a, like, like a really good leap, so I can jump over and make it to his house on top of his roof. Knowing that there's a gate downstairs, right? Had spike. If I don't make it, my life is in jeopardy. And I was so compelled, so possessed to do it. As I was about to go, my older cousin, who saved my life, came upstairs, came on the roof, and he yelled. I'm talking about like out of fear, saying, "Don't do it. What are you doing? What are you doing? Have you not learned? Have you not heard what happened to your friend? He tried. He almost lost his life. And then he grabbed me. He drugged me like downstairs, and I told him, I'm like, all I saw was a bunch of like little beings telling me to go ahead, jump, make that jump. You can make it. And that's when he told me, yeah, I'm up there all the time. And then they like offer me things, like they telling me to jump. They tell me to do this, like how many times they told me to take my own life. Like they tricksters pretty much. So yes, they do exist in Haiti. They probably exist everywhere. But like they more known to be existing in Mexico for some reason. That's where they manifest the most. And they like to throw rocks. They like to tell people to actually hurt themselves. That's what makes them like, I don't know, like powerful. Like they think it's a joke when they see people get hurt. But they do exist. These beings right there. Yes. They tiny, but they have like this, like, I don't know, this way of like perceiving people, like to do things to themselves, to others, to hurt themselves. I don't know how, but yeah, that's my experience with them. Literally, almost like literally went for my own death right there, listening to these things. If it wasn't for my cousin, older cousin, I wouldn't be here today.
I have a Llorona video that I want to show you guys. This was actually just captured in October in Durango, Mexico. The person who submitted this has been tagged down below. If you don't see her down there, it's because she decided to be anonymous. She actually sent me 2 videos. This is the first one. You kind of see this dark hooded shadow kind of like walking back and forth. This is the one that really caught my attention. That is definitely her. I mean, the video was captured by her in-laws. They typically go and visit Durango, Mexico about twice a year. They're actually currently there right now. When they first captured this on video, they were unsure what they were really looking at and actually kept it to themselves all of this time until she came across my page and wanted to get my opinion. But I mean, I believe it's her. What do you guys think?
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
This story comes out of central Illinois. There was this man named Jack, and Jack said when he was younger, him and his friend were playing out in the woods. And he said they came across this pond in the middle of the forest. And he said when they got to the shoreline, they looked out and there was like a little island in the middle of the pond with a couple trees. Now Jack noticed his friend started getting like really nervous. And he said his friend was like, look, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here. And he's like, why, what's wrong? And he's like, come on, we gotta leave. So his friend, took off and just started heading back into town. So he follows his friend and they go all the way back to his house. He goes inside and his friend tells his dad, like, hey dad, I found that place you were talking about with the pond and the island in the middle. And his dad was like, what, are you guys okay? Like, is everything all right? And Jack's like, what's wrong? And his dad's like, nothing, just don't ever go back to that place. Don't ever go there. And he said like his dad would never talk about like why they shouldn't go there. So later on in life, Jack said he was about 25, and at this time he was living in his car. And he said, he would park at places around town, but he kept getting told to leave. So he remembered that spot out in the woods, that there was this little dirt road that would take you, far out into the woods, right by where this pond was. And he said, you know what, I bet I could park there, I could sleep there, and no one would disturb me. So he drives his car out to this spot. It's about 9, 10 o'clock at night. He said he rolled down his window and he started smoking a cigarette. Well, he said all of a sudden, like a breeze of wind started to pick up, and he caught wind of this very bad smell. And he said it just smelled like, kind of like rotten eggs. And he said when the breeze would stop, the smell would stop. But as the breeze picked up, it would come back again. And he said after a while, he started hearing what he thought at the time were sounds of coyotes. And he said he just kept hearing like this howling sound. Well, he didn't think much of it, and he starts getting tired. So he gets in the back of his car, and he puts a pillow down, puts a blanket over him, and he falls asleep. Well, he said, it was a really nice night, so he had the windows partly rolled down, letting the breeze in. And he said he just remembers waking up to this weird feeling on his ankle. And he said when he looked down, there was a hand that was covered in hair grabbing his leg. And he said when he looked up out the window, he could see the face of a wolf, but like a body of a hairy man. And he said there were two bright yellow eyes just staring at him. He said this thing grabbed his ankle and started trying to pull him out of the back of the car. You know, he's screaming and yelling, trying to fight this thing and kicking as hard as he can. Finally, this thing lets up. He gets up to the front of the car and he starts the engine and he starts taking off. Well, he said this thing still had its arm in the window and he starts dragging it along the road with him, and it's trying to actually get inside the car. And then he said finally it just kind of broke off and it like rolled and then took off into the woods. And he said he, was like terrified. He's speeding down this dirt road, and he said all of a sudden he noticed standing on the side of the road up ahead, there was this woman with like long black hair. And he said she was just standing there staring at him driving by. And he said she was covered in some kind of white paint with these black markings all over her. And he said he just like something about her just felt very, very off. But he kept driving and she just stared at him as he drove past. So he said, he got back into town and stuff and he was pretty freaked out. He calls up his old friend that he had the experience with when he was younger. And he says, hey, you know that spot with the pond and the island out there? Like, why did you get so freaked out? And he goes, well, my dad said that there used to be like the satanic cult that lived there and they would do all this, black magic ritual type stuff. And he said like strange stuff would happen in that area and people would disappear all the time. And he said when my dad was younger, he seen what he still swears to this day was a half man, half wolf creature in those woods.
In 1978, a 23-year-old named Stephen Kubacki was attending a college called Hope University in Michigan. It was a small Christian school where he was studying German and history. Stephen was a little more free-spirited than the typical student enrolled at Hope University, which was very conservative. He was a big-time outdoor enthusiast and he loved to go skiing. In February of 1978, which was just months before Stephen was set to graduate, he decided he wanted to go on a solo ski trip around the Lake Michigan area. And so this area was known as the Lake Michigan Triangle. It's also known as just the Michigan Triangle, and it's an awful lot like the Bermuda Triangle, which is in that northern section of the Atlantic Ocean where planes and boats have gone missing over the years kind of inexplicably. Well, the Michigan Triangle is like that. And starting in the late 1800s, there were all these disappearances that started occurring in the Michigan Triangle area. And so Stephen was going to be skiing around the Lake Michigan area, and so he would be in the Michigan Triangle. Now, he had told his friends and his family that he was just going out for a day trip, and Stephen was a very accomplished outdoorsman, excellent cross-country skier, so really no one bats an eye when he decides to go out and, go skiing. No one even thought twice about it. They're like, all right, cool, we'll see you tomorrow. A day after Stephen had left for this ski trip, some snowmobilers were out in the Michigan Triangle area and they spotted a trail of ski tracks that led up to the edge of the lake, where at the edge of the lake were a set of skis and two ski poles. Just stopped abruptly, and they see that this looks like someone might have fallen into the lake. Now, there weren't any clear breaks in the lake itself, but they figured it was worth telling police and to at least let them know in case they're looking for someone who might have gone missing in the area. And so it was around this time that Stephen Kubacki's friends and family started to recognize that he wasn't back yet, and he should have been. And so they end up calling in an official missing persons report because he should have been back. And so the two things happened in tandem. You have the snowmobilers that have found the ski poles and the skis, and you have the missing persons report that's come out for Stephen Kubacki, and immediately they're connected, and this massive search effort is launched with a focus on where those skis and the poles were found. Now, they looked everywhere, but it was like his tracks went right up to the edge of the lake and then just stopped. There weren't any more tracks on the lake. There were no breaks in the lake. There was nothing there. It was like he just suddenly either went into the ground or just vanished somehow. And so as hundreds of people have descended on this area to look for Steve Kubacki, his backpack shows up right next to his skis and ski poles. That was the first place that everybody went, and his backpack wasn't there. And they didn't really even know how to investigate it. It was just this weird phenomenon where all these people are like, I guess it just must have been there the whole time. They just didn't have a good answer for it. And so after a long and very elaborate search, ultimately they had to call it off. And so they told the family and friends that what must have happened is he got out of his skis and put everything down, went onto the lake, and it cracked and he fell in. And so that's what everybody believed. I mean, why wouldn't they? 15 months go by and Stephen's father hears a knocking on the door. And who's at the door? Stephen Kubaki. And when he sees his son, he can't believe it because he believed his son was dead. But Kubaki has no idea, Steve has no idea how much time has passed. He saw a newspaper, Stephen saw a newspaper in his father's house, and it showed that it had been 15 months since he disappeared. He asked his father, like, how can this be? And he told Stephen, you were near Lake Michigan. That's 700 miles away. How did you get here? And Stephen's like, I woke up in a field about 40 miles from here, and I went to, my aunt's house, your sister's house, and she brought me here. And no one had any idea how he got there or why he was in the field in Pittsfield to begin with. In addition, Stephen had on clothes that he didn't recognize. He had a new backpack that had maps and all sorts of kind of like trinkets from different parts of the country. He had been to apparently San Francisco, Sacramento, all over California, to Chicago, to Utah. He's been all over the country, according to the things that are in his backpack. He had $40 in cash, he had new sneakers, new glasses, and he had a t-shirt on from a Wisconsin marathon. It says he was a participant in. And one of the only things that Stephen would say to the media, because he basically swore off the media and he didn't want to give his story to anybody, he just said to one of the news outlets that he felt like he had been doing a lot of running. But other than that, we don't know what he was doing for 15 months, and apparently he doesn't either. His last story was documented in the official American Ethnology Report from 1897, 1898. Although the story is, well documented in this report, the location is unclear. People have speculated that it's either Ireland, Scotland, or Wales. So just take this with a grain of salt that the location is not known. It's an older story, but it was officially documented in an official report. In 1898, a 12-year-old boy was playing at this river that ran near his house. He was out in the forest, he was playing to this river, and he had a bow and arrow, and he was practicing shooting his bow and arrow. And after a little while, he got bored of his bow and arrow, and he went to the stream itself, and he started to build a little dam in the river to try to catch some fish. And as he's building this thing up, he's down on his knees building up this little dam in the river, he notices someone is walking down the river towards him. And he looks up, and he would describe this person as looking normal, a normal-looking stranger. It's a gentleman who shows up. He's wearing a nice suit. He walks over to Wofford, and he apparently just came out of the woods. And he says, hey, what are you doing? And the boy, he's like, oh, I'm making this fish trap. And he's like, man, that looks like a lot of work. Like, you should take a break. And the boy's like, yeah, I guess I could take a break. And the gentleman just says, well, if you want, while you're taking this break, you can come to my house. It's just up past the bend here. My family's there. You can have a meal with us, and then you can come back and you can finish your fish trap. And so, this is a different time. This is the late 1800s, and I'm not suggesting that at the time it was totally cool to go with strangers into weird houses in the forest, but the boy felt compelled to say yes. He didn't want to be rude, and maybe his fear of strangers is less extreme than it is, for us today in 2020. And so he agrees to go with the man. They make their way up past the river into the forest a little bit, and they come up to this cabin. Now, the boy played in the woods here, and he had never seen this house before. But he's not too concerned, because as soon as he gets to the house, this cabin in the woods, he sees that the lights are on, and he hears kids playing inside, and a close family friend of his family's is sitting on the porch talking to one of the other apparently family members of the stranger. And so the boy's put at ease, and he says hi to the family friend, and the family friend, waves back. The boy goes inside, and he sees that this family has a couple of kids, roughly his age. They're playing, goofing around. They have dinner, and this wonderful meal, and the boy, Wofford, is like, man, this is so great. And after the meal, he lays down and falls asleep. He kind of loses track of time. The boy falls asleep at this cabin. And so he wakes up early the next morning, and he feels horrible because he didn't mean to fall asleep, and he didn't tell anyone from his family where he was going. And he's thinking, man, they're going to be so worried about me. And so as he's getting up to leave, the stranger is already awake, the one that had met him down by the river and called him up to the house. And the boy says, hey, can you walk me down back to the river? And the stranger's like, I can take you part of the way down, sure. So the two of them, they're having small talk, and the boy's thanking the man for his generosity. And so as they're walking, they're passing by an orchard on one side and a cornfield on the other. And it's this beautiful morning, the sun's just coming up, and the boy remembers thinking how beautiful the setting was. But he also was thinking, like, I don't even know where I am right now. And I'm assuming he's walking me back to where I live, but this doesn't look familiar at all. And the stranger stops. They get to almost a junction right at the end of the orchard and of the cornfield. And the stranger tells the boy, Wofford, he says, hey, just go straight. You're going to turn down this way, turn back, and you'll be at the river again where we met. And the boy thanks the stranger, and the stranger turns and starts walking back towards his cabin and says, hey, good luck, see ya. And the boy starts following the man's directions. And Wofford, as he's walking, following the stranger's directions, he's suddenly curious and turns around to look back at this strange person who had brought him up to the house and then now brought him back. And he's stunned because suddenly the orchard and the cornfield are not there. There is no orchard or cornfield. It's just deep, dark forest. And he's like, what's going on? He turns back and there's a search party, or it looks like a search party, running up to him. Part of the search party is the family friend that he had seen at the house. And the boy's like looking at these people running towards him, like they're running to him. And he recognizes the family friend, and he can tell they're like urgently looking for him. And he felt bad because he knows he slept over through the night. So he's like, hey, I'm here. And they're like, where have you been? And the boy turns to the family friend and he's like, didn't you tell them I was with you? And the family friend is like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, the house with the family. We ate dinner together last night. And the guy, the family friend, is like, I've been looking for you for the past several days. I've been with your family looking for you. You've been gone for 3 days. And the boy is like, what? And as he's describing the kind of general vicinity of where this cabin was, he's kind of pointing back up towards where it was and describing it from where the river was. The family says to him that since you've been missing, we've heard rhythmic drumming non-stop coming from the section of the forest that you just described. We can never pinpoint where it was coming from. And now that you just showed up, the drumming has stopped. And so the kid's terrified, but there's no answers. Pretty creepy. So 3 very strange stories that luckily all of them ended with the person being found again. But it doesn't change the fact that the mystery remains. Where did they go? It's like they left the earth for a couple of days, or in Stephen Kubaki's case, for over a year, and then came back. It was like a glitch in the matrix or something. And so I would love to hear in the comments what you think can possibly explain how these people are disappearing without a trace and then reappearing days, weeks, months, years later, not having any idea how they got there or what had happened to them. How can we possibly reconcile that?
This is the most eerie thing I've heard of in a very long time. On August 14th, 2005, a commercial airplane took off from Cyprus, and no one on board knew that they were already in danger. Helios Airways Flight 522 was scheduled to fly to Prague with a stop in Athens, but shortly after takeoff, something went terribly wrong. During maintenance the night before, a crucial switch controlling cabin pressurization was accidentally left in manual mode. So on the day of the flight, and as the plane climbed, oxygen levels began dropping very slowly. Inside the cockpit, warning alarms did begin to sound, but the alarm used the same tone as another warning that pilots are trained to recognize. So the crew misidentified the problem, which would be a fatal mistake. As the aircraft continued climbing, the pilots and passengers began to suffer from oxygen deprivation, otherwise known as hypoxia. Symptoms of hypoxia include confusion, loss of consciousness, and eventually death. And over the next few hours, everyone on the plane would pass out one by one. But the plane continued flying on autopilot, following its programmed route. As air traffic control tried desperately to reach the crew, they received no response. So Greek fighter jets were sent to try to intercept the plane, but as they did, they saw a haunting scene inside. All of the passengers slumped over in their seats with oxygen masks hanging above them, and everyone in the cockpit perfectly still. A flight attendant who had pilot training would briefly regain consciousness, and in a final act of bravery, he entered the cockpit to try to make an emergency landing. He was able to turn the plane toward the south, which is believed to be a heroic last effort to guide the falling plane away from Greece's capital city, potentially saving hundreds or thousands of people. But sadly, the flight attendant would lose consciousness again as the plane ran out of fuel and crashed into a hillside near Athens, killing all 121 people on board.
They were live when they captured something truly terrifying. Two friends were enjoying a sunny day at a private pool, laughing, dancing, and streaming live for their followers. Nothing suggested that anything was about to go wrong. A few hours later, the video spread across social media, but not for the reasons they had hoped. On closer inspection, many people noticed a chilling detail. Behind one of the girls, barely visible among the trees, stood a motionless figure, a man wearing a mask. At first, it looks like an optical illusion, but when you zoom in, it becomes clear. He is really there, staring directly at the girls. The two friends keep laughing, completely unaware that someone is watching them. Then suddenly, one of them turns around. Her expression changes, her smile disappears, as if she sensed something behind her. She whispers something to her friend, lowers the camera, and the live stream abruptly cuts off. That was the last time they were ever seen. Next day, their belongings were found by the edge of the pool, but the girls themselves were nowhere to be found. Police launched an investigation, but it led nowhere.
It's just come out that this former NFL player has been missing for 6 months. This is an incredibly strange case. It came out a day or so that Sam Beal, who used to play for the New York Giants, hasn't actually been seen since last summer. He was an incredibly successful athlete. He played for the Giants from 2018 to 2021. He's only 29 years old, and at the time he'd apparently just agreed to borrow his girlfriend's car for the day. He had dropped her off at work in Michigan as normal, and that was the last time she ever saw him. He then appears to have driven across the country and ended up at Virginia Beach, which is odd in itself. Like, why would you drive all that way? He didn't tell anyone that that was his plan. It's very odd. But here's where it gets really eerie. That same car that he had borrowed was then found at Virginia Beach, totally abandoned. And inside were Sam's socks and shoes. Now, I don't know if this is relevant to the disappearance. It very well could be, but his shoes and socks were found in the passenger footwell of the car, and there was sand in there. I don't know what that could mean. He'd not taken anything else with him, like he didn't have a big bag or anything to suggest that he was going to go on a road trip or stay somewhere for an extended period of time. It makes no sense. Now, his older sister has posted online, "We've done everything we could on our end to piece things together, and at this point we're in desperate need of support on all ends. I'm not here to answer a bunch of whys and hows. I just need this to land in the right direction to gain some form of answers or closure."
Nobody knows what happened to Jason Jolkowski. Honestly, his case is heartbreaking. Jason was born on June 24th of 1981. He lived with his parents in Omaha, Nebraska, and at the time of his disappearance, he was a part-time student at the Iowa Western Community College in Council Bluffs, Iowa. He was currently studying radio broadcasting, and he did have plans to become a radio DJ for KIWR, but at the time of his disappearance, he was working at a Fazoli's. On June 13th of 2001, Jason was scheduled to work, but his car was in the shop, so he had just planned to walk to work. One of his co-workers did offer to give him a ride, but he was having trouble giving his co-worker directions to his house, so they planned to meet up at Benson High School, which is the high school that both Jason and his co-worker went. The last time that Jason was reportedly seen was at 10:45 that morning. A neighbor saw Jason and his little brother pulling the trash cans from the curb back to the house. When Jason didn't show up to the high school, the coworker would eventually call their boss and say that Jason didn't show up, so the boss called Jason's house looking for him. This was anywhere between 11 and 11:15 in the morning. Jason has never been seen or heard from again. This is absolutely heartbreaking. Now, his parents did wait 24 hours before reporting him missing because they thought that there was a 24-hour waiting period. And I want to stress this. You do not have to wait 24 hours to report someone missing. Anytime something strange happens, you can report that to police. There is no 24-hour waiting period. At first, police started looking at this as if maybe it was a runaway situation, but Jason wasn't the type to run away. He had plans, he had a good family. He wasn't the kind of person to run away, so they started interviewing neighbors and anyone that they could think of that might have seen Jason, but nothing was ever found. Police did look at the security footage of the high school. They realized that Jason never showed up to the high school. He simply vanished. Jason's family has never given up on him. They're still looking, and the Omaha police are still looking as well. In 2005, his parents lobbied for Jason's Law, and this was passed by Nebraska legislators. It provides a statewide database on missing persons. Here is an age progression photo of what Jason might look like today. And honestly, his family just deserves answers. Jason deserves justice. If you have any tips or might know anything at all, please contact the Omaha Police Department.